Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. Prospect Martin Bakole has come out on social media claiming he didn't try to quit in his fight with Michael Hunter, in which he was injured and ultimately knocked out in the final round. So let's put those claims to the test in this video. And I want to get a bit of reaction from you on that as well. And also I'll show you what fans have been telling Bakole on social media and how much credibility they think his statement holds. Also in this video I want to touch on the issue of fighter welfare, because the decision for a clearly injured Bakole to fight on after the 8th round, it's divided some fans. There's been two schools of thought there. And there has been quite a bit of criticism levelled at the Congolese fighters trainer, Billy Nelson. And I want to wade in at the end of this video on the outrageous scorecards, which, from what Billy Nelson is saying, had the fight on a knife's edge on the judges' scorecards heading into that final round. Buckle in. Let's go. By now, many of you will have seen the images of Bakole being stopped in that 10th round. Quite dramatically, in fact. He'd been the favourite heading into that fight with Michael Hunter, expected to beat him. And Hunter, a former top cruiserweight who's now made some waves in the division by beating Bakole, and he's making his way in the heavyweight division onto the next one, where Bakole is now with a rebuild. But late in that fight, in the 8th round, Bakole injured his arm at some point, in what appeared to be some sort of a shoulder injury, upper arm injury. And the end result was his right arm was effectively rendered useless. And in between rounds, the broadcast cut to his corner, and we had Billy Nelson imploring Bakole to carry on, to which Bakole can be heard to say, no. He's shaking his head at the same time, and later he says, how am I going to win with one hand? That's what I saw and heard in the live broadcast. The commentators obviously heard and saw the same, and they stated Bakole was trying to quit. But Martin Bakole, he's been out on Twitter subsequently claiming he didn't try to quit, saying, I would just like to say, I asked my coach at Billy Nelson Box to pull my shoulder as it was sore, not pull me from the fight. Thank you for your support. I will come back better, I promise. Now, I must admit, when I saw that, I instantly thought, why is he trying to rewrite history here? It seemed clear to me at the time, he wanted out. And if he didn't want out, if he didn't want to quit, why was Billy Nelson so desperately imploring him to keep going, to box on, saying, you can't quit, Martin? Why was he saying all that? It doesn't make sense for him to say all that if he didn't get an indication from Bakole that he wanted to pull out. Right? Obviously, quite a number of others who saw the fight live thought the same thing, and they've responded accordingly to Bakole, calling him out on his I didn't try to quit statement. One comment saying, unfortunately, mate, every word was televised. You wanted out, he wanted you in. Another, commend you for sticking up for your coach, Martin, but we all know that isn't true, pal. Another, to be honest, I think you're protecting him when he should have been the one protecting you. But I'm no expert. Further comments, did you not know the fight was on live TV? We all seen and heard what happened. And others, as you can see here, they're saying that what Bakole is saying is a lie. Obviously, there is a gap between what Bakole claims he said and what people heard on the broadcast. So let's run it back. Let's run this back. I'm going to play you the broadcast, what was on TV, but minus the commentators wading in. We'll just take that out of the equation, the commentators, and you can just hear what was on camera, Billy Nelson and Bakole. The only things that were seen.
Carry on. No, hey, no, 2 rounds to go. You must continue.
Let's listen to this.
Martin, you need to listen. You need to listen. You just work on the jab. We'll jab his head off. Please, you need to work. Martin, you're no fucking quitting you. Martin. Carry on. No, hey, no, 2 rounds to go. You must continue.
Let's listen to this.
Martin, you need to listen. You need to listen. You're just working the job. Would you have his head off? Please, you need to work. Martin, you're no fucking quitting you. Martin.
Now, having watched that multiple times, I gotta say, I think he wanted out. How about you? Or is there not enough evidence to convince you either way? But my view is he'd mentally quit. He wanted out of there. One of the things that's flared up from all of this is the situation around fighter welfare. Even from some of the comments that I read out earlier from social media, some were aimed at Billy Nelson, who we just heard imploring a clearly injured Bakole to fight on with one arm. A Martin Bakole who the commentators, who Nelson and most fight fans thought that he wanted to quit, that he wanted out. And Nelson, he clearly wasn't going to let Bakole quit. And as I noted in my post-fight video, he also told Bakole after the 9th round, a round later, that if he didn't let his right hand go, that's his injured arm, he couldn't be champion. Subsequently on social media, many fans have been going in on Billy Nelson, criticising him for putting Bakole at risk of further injury by letting him carry on, and that his decision to push Bakole led to his fighter being knocked out. For me, it's hard to argue against that logic. When I saw Bakole that he couldn't lift his arm, I thought, he's going to lose the fight. His best weapon, it's now gone, it's ineffectual, it's going to be hard for him to defend himself. And through the fight, he was getting tagged rather easily when he had two hands. So they probably, in my view, should have called it quits. I've also seen some saying Nelson should have been hauled before the British Boxing Board of Control for his actions, and some do want some form of sanction imposed on him. But there is another side to this story. Some fans are actually saying, and there's been a few videos about this as well, that in many respects, seeing the fight through, even though he got knocked out, it could have been better for Bakole than quitting on a stool. That psychologically, it might have been harder for Bakole to regroup, pick himself up, recover mentally if he had pulled the pin after the 8th round. And I can see the argument there, and there could very well be some merit in it. And let's face it, if Bakole had landed a Hail Mary in that final 2 rounds and knocked Hunter out, stopped him or whatever, he would have been praised for coming through the adversity. You know, fans were very fickle, and if he had come through and pulled off a miracle job, he would have been, certainly lauded among fans for sort of a come-from-behind victory, especially because many of us thought that he was down in the fight. But it will be now interesting to hear, how bad is Bakole injured? How badly injured is he? Because if he needs surgery, for example, or is out for an indefinite period of time, several months or whatever, a lot of people are going to automatically point to Billy Nelson's actions and say, see, fighting on, he made him fight on, he made the injury worse. Arguably, some fans probably believe just continuing like he did, having to throw extra punches, especially in that 10th round, it was aggravation to the injury and it wasn't needed. And it did look to be somewhat painful. Bakole didn't want to be in there from what most fight fans saw. And Billy Nelson, he hasn't just been copping flack for keeping Bakole in the fight. He's actually been back and forth with fans on social media about scorecards. Initially, he was saying his fighter was 1 up on 1 card and even on 2 others heading into that 10th round. But later, he did correct it to say he was down on 1 card even on 2 others. But even then, on reading that, I, like quite a few other people who were reacting to those scores, I was a bit mortified that those scorecards were anything remotely like this. This was a fight in which Bakole was clearly down on the cards. I can't see a case that Bakole was anywhere near level with Hunter. He was at least 2 or 3 rounds down, and that's probably being generous. And I'd note Billy Nelson himself had said on the broadcast after the 6th round that Bakole was losing the fight and he needed to pick it up. And he didn't. So it was lucky that Hunter got the knockout because he was going to get robbed. They were going to rob him blind. There was just no way Bakole was in the conversation to win that fight on points. He needed a knockout, and I'm fairly certain that that's the fight most other people saw as well. So questions need to be asked about those scorecards. and potentially the competence of those who were scoring the fight, because it's a terrible look. And it would have been a massive howler of a decision had Bakole survived the 10th round, injured arm and all, not being able to throw many punches with that right arm, and still got a decision. I think, people would have been up in arms about that. But fortunately, in the end, the guy who threw caution to the wind, took chances, might have been a bit wild at times, but he still outboxed and out-hustled Bakole. And the right guy got the win. And here is what Hunter did have to say after that win.
To the fans, I'm coming back home with that belt like I said I was. This is going to look good in my mom's house. And I thank you guys so much for watching and tuning in.
Okay, so what did you make of Martin Bakole's statement that he didn't try to quit? I think there's some pretty clear evidence that, he did. But, let me know what you think. Do you think Bakole, he didn't want it? Do you think he did want to quit? I mean, if he wasn't, why was Billy Nelson imploring him desperately to keep fighting, to stay in the fight? Also, what did you make of the scorecards? They were pretty terrible. They were pretty terrible. And also, do you think Billy Nelson deserves a serve here? Or are fans being a bit tough? Is this going to be good for Bakole in some way? Or is that just an argument to mask the fact that he's got a pretty badly injured arm and he ended up getting knocked out and all involved need to take an uppercut? Drop a comment, loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out. If you want even more boxing content, come and join me on Patreon. Every week on a Sunday, I drop a new video on something topical or thought-provoking from the heavyweight division, ranging from rankings, the business of boxing, the false economy of deluded fanboys, the twists and turns in the division, to assessments of fighters and their statements. I hope to see you there, and for more information go to patreon.com/boxing squared. The address is on screen now.